Hello, good evening, welcome to UPfront. My name is Raymond Acquah. Tonight, we ask, the government of Ghana, is it living a lavish life that it cannot fund? We'll explore this question, plus other realistic expenditure and revenue options that will help this country weather the current economic storm. This Ghanaian economy, we all know, appears not to be showing any signs of recovery as the current cost of living crisis deepens. Just to put this in the proper perspective, now, just yesterday, Bloomberg reported, and this is a very credible institution, reported that yields on Ghana's bonds were set to surge as the highest among emerging economies. This is the latest bad news on Ghana's economy readying for an IMF program. Now, let's put this in perspective because it's important we find out how we got here. This is because the president is saying that his government cannot be held responsible for it. Now, in 2014, a former minister for finance and economic planning, Professor Akpeteshie, stated that Ghana is reeling from economic woes because it has been largely living beyond its means. Tonight, we are asking how true this statement is of the current situation we find ourselves. Joining me for this conversation and in studio is a former Deputy Minister for Finance and ranking member on the Finance Committee of Parliament, Dr. Kisel Atufosin.
Thank you.
Honorable, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we're supposed to have the current chairman of the Finance Committee joining this conversation, but in the last minute, about some 30 minutes to this conversation, he pulled out. We'll start the conversation, however, with a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. Professor Godfrey Bokpin will be joining us for a better appreciation of this matter with first commentary on this one. Prof, you're welcome to UPfront.
Good evening to your host, your panelists, and then good evening to your cherished viewers.
The question is straight and perhaps put in a crude form. Are we living a champagne life on an akpeteshie budget?
Some way, somehow, we have been living beyond our means. That is very clear. It didn't start yesterday. If you look at the data right after the completion of HIPIC in 2004, and then the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative 2006, when Ghana filed for divorce from the IMF and got the divorce approved in 2006, because after we had finished HIPIC and the Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative, our debt to GDP ratio came down to less than 30%. That meant that we had fiscal space, borrowing space. There was nothing wrong with that. We could actually inject growth through external debt financing. So countries do that. But the question is, if you look at from 2007, when we did our first Eurobond, if you look at our expenditure drive, if you look at our domestic revenue mobilization drive, if you look at how we finance that deficit from debt and how we have unproductively utilized those debts, because there's nothing wrong with borrowing. If you borrow and invest that in enhancing the cash flow generation capacity of the economy would expand. The economy will generate greater cash flow. So once that happens, and you're able to convert a sizable portion of that into tax revenue, you'll be able to continue your debt, because your debt repayment capacity is a function of the growth of your economy, right? Real GDP growth. It's also a function of export earnings, because particularly of the external debt component, even if you look at the domestic debt, because we have offshore investors participating in that domestic issue, then even though they are cedi denominated, the foreign exchange earning also plays a role in that regard, because when they are exiting, they will be looking at converting their cedi holdings into dollars in order to exit. So foreign exchange plays a key role from there. Then we are also looking at it also as a capacity of your revenue generation. But Raymond, I won't say from independence, because what we are talking about this evening, you can see it playing out right from independence. In fact, towards the end of 1965, you can see it playing out in 1966 in Ghana's engagement with the IMF. You could see it playing out in the 70s. You could see it playing out in the 80s. You could see it playing out in the 90s, early 2000s. You could see it playing out in 2014 when Ghana made an application to the fund on August 6, 2014. That got approved on 3rd April 2015 to April 2019. But of course, the 2014 one, our debt to GDP ratio wasn't as precarious as we have it right now, right? So, and then you can see the balloon debt, you can see the associated servicing cost. In fact, unprecedented. If you look at how much Ghana is setting aside for debt servicing, just debt servicing alone, we are not talking about the principal amortization or repayment, right? That is clearly unsustainable. If you want to describe that in terms of champagne or whatever, akpeteshie budget or something, I can leave that to you. But the reality on the ground is that we are living far beyond our means. In fact, the last 30 years, the fiscal deficit has averaged 6.8% of GDP. Typically, in the standard finance literature, fiscal deficit necessarily is not harmful. But the persistence, the source of financing, and then also the direction, right? If the deficit is as a result of the spending that in the productive sectors of the economy, then there will be no problem, because other countries, their debt to GDP ratio is worse than ours, right? But if they have the corresponding wealth, right, and then also the cash flow generation capacity increases correspondingly, then there's no problem. But what we have here is a clear case of largely unproductive use of those borrowed funds. That's one. Of course, you can also look at the rate at which we have been borrowing. And here, I'm not talking about the rate of debt accumulation. I'm talking about the interest rate. If you look at it with respect to bonds, you can talk about the coupon rate or the yield on those bonds that we give to investors. Because the point is that the rate, the interest rate at which you borrow, whether at the private sector level, at the firm level, or at the country level, has implication for productivity growth, right? So if you look at the rate at which we've been borrowing, and if you are not then careful as a country and improve efficiency in your public investment management process and seek for greater value for money, because the interest rates are very high, then it's going to be difficult for the economy to turn itself around in terms of the productivity dimension to correspond with the burden of the debt. Then in that case, your debt burden becomes higher, right? Essentially, what somebody will say is that, and in that case, the marginal cost of the extra debt after EPIC and multilateral debt relief are actually higher than the marginal benefit from the utilization of those debts. But of course, in terms of the state, it's not every debt that they deploy that you can assess purely on the strength of cash flows and the rest of them. But even where we decide to invest those monies in economic infrastructure, or rather than social infrastructure and all of that, I think if you look at the level of inefficiency across public investment management process, all of that do not lend to debt sustainability. Okay, so all of these things are coming to roost.
Brilliant. But I need to ask this question directly. Is the current debt sustainability issue you just raised, and more importantly, is our inability to balance our books because we have actually had so much debt on our books, part of the reasons why we've gone to the IMF?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's one of the reasons. In fact, and it's not unique. You can find that same reason in our first engagement with the aborted engagement with the IMF in 1965. You can see that in 1966. You can see that in the 70s program that we had with them. You can see that in the 80s. You can see that in the 90s. Look, Ghana has struggled to manage its debt since independence. You could see that also in the 16th IMF program, which ran between April 3rd, 2015 to April 2019. So one of the objectives of the 16th IMF-supported program, which ended in April 2019, was to achieve debt sustainability. But at the end of the program, you can check the IMF review. At the end of the program, it was clear that the 16th IMF program could not achieve the objective of reducing our debt to a sustainable level. and Ghana officially entered a high risk of debt distress category. From 2014, we couldn't exit that position even when we exited the IMF program. So what the government did, in fact, there were waivers. Okay, so essentially, instead of we passing, we were passed under the 16th IMF program along certain program indicators or targets, right? So, but the measures that the government claimed that they were going to put in place as part of the exit strategy, we did not follow through. So when we had passed the Fiscal Responsibility Act and capped the deficit at 5% of GDP, what did we do? It was observed more in breach than in compliance. What government did then was to report the deficit on a para basis. Deficit with and without financial sector cleanup and the energy sector indebtedness. Okay, but at the end of the day, that is purely an accounting treatment because the effect is real.
Okay.
Okay.
That's interesting. It's because, I'm building up to the point that's being made by the executive president just yesterday. The president says Ghana's decision to go to the IMF cannot be blamed on government. In fact, he has evidence to back it. He says the big difference we are having in Ghana today and why we have gone back to the IMF is that everybody recognizes that it's not as a result of that's the president's mismanagement, as was the case during the tenure of the previous government. Is it a statement of fact?
Do you know something? I think this is where we miss it. This is where leadership fails the ordinary Ghanaian. I think that it is not fair to the data on the ground to say that the current government should not take responsibility. I think let's go beyond. I think our democracy, after so many years, we need to see a certain level of maturity, right? Where we admit. If you don't admit, look, to be found, you must admit that you are missing or you are lost somewhere along the line. So, look, I'll give you an example. In 2020, the year of COVID, whilst COVID did not make its headquarters in Ghana, essentially saying that the impact is pervasive, if you look at the level of deficit that Ghana recorded in 2020, it could not solely be as a result of COVID. You can see the political business cycle also showing up in the 2020 election. Okay? So you could not. And in fact, if you look at the financial sector cleanup, it was so expensive. We are not the only people saying it. The IMF recognizes that. It was an intervention that was necessary, but I think it was expensively arranged and inefficiently delivered, right? So if you put all these things together, you could not take yourself out of that. You could not.
But
apart from that,
with respect, the president is saying, I didn't mismanage the economy, and that you should see the very realities on the ground. That is his most important comment here.
No, you. In fact, I, with all due respect, I do not think that statement from the president helps anyone. It doesn't. It doesn't because there is enough data on the ground to support that it is not entirely historical. It is not.
Well,
let me tell you why it is so. From 2017, the government made a lot of headlines of positive GDP growth, of how the economy was doing. 2017. And that was largely on the back of hydrocarbon production. But the government took the credit. 2018, the government took the credit. 2019, the government took the credit. These 3 years that I had mentioned, well, all these issues were there. Before COVID, we had recognized that the vulnerabilities were clear. Okay? So so to say that you are not to be blamed, but of course, that is basic to say, but please, Raymond, with all due respect, I think that let's admit that we could have done better. I will tell you something. If you look at the level of borrowing between January 1st 2017 to date, as compared to where the debt level was at the 31st December 2016, you check the numbers. Of course, we can say that the drivers have included energy sector, it has included financial sector, and the rest of them. If you isolate these two, you can see the rate of debt accumulation, even from the central fiscal debt accumulation, right? You can see that. You can see Euro bonds that we have done and all of that. So this is not the time to say, so who should take the blame? When you take over assets and liabilities. I believe that when the government was campaigning in the run-up to the 2016 election, they knew what they were heading into, right? What they were going to take over and all of that. So I think that, but look at it this way. We have demonstrated that the size of government is anti-growth. Here, you cannot blame anybody. The president, government should take responsibility and do the needful, right, and downsize. It's important.
Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us on this conversation. Professor Godfred Bokpin is a finance professor at the University of Ghana Business School. I did tell you that my guest in studio is a man who was at the Ministry of Finance, and he was part of the people that actually, in the words of Professor Kwesi Botwe, always make us live beyond our means. As has been stated by Professor Bokpin, living beyond our means is the Ghanaian attitude. We have done that since the 60s. So basically, the executive president of the Republic has been saying that, well, he didn't take us to IMF because he mismanaged the economy. Everybody can see the writings on the wall, and the external shocks are largely responsible for our current state. In fact, one important part, he says, he distinguishes the IMF program under this government from the previous government's own, the government you served, and said clearly here, and I'm quoting him once again, the big difference is that we are having in Ghana today, we have got back to the IMF, is that everybody recognizes it's not as a result of my mismanagement, as was the case during the tenure of the previous government. So if you, in the NDC, mismanaged the economy, which moral authority do you have to talk about the economy today, Honorable Kisil Atufose?
Thank you very much, Raymond. Raymond, to start with, I was shocked to my bone to hear the president, in his own words, that I cannot be blamed. But who does he expect to be blamed? You have become a president of this republic since January 7th, 2017, some 5.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. The management of this country has been placed as a mandate given to you as a president of the republic. The constitution of this republic has given you more or less dictatorship powers for you to rule and manage and for us to live in an efficient manner. Unfortunately, what we have seen over the years is mismanagement. Raymond, I say this for a simple reason, that this is a president that inherited massive goodwill, a goodwill that can change any country at any point in time, coupled with robust tax policies, with a lot of revenue flows.
An IMF program.
A lot of revenue flow. Yes, an IMF program that gives you a lot of credibility.
Okay.
Big time revenue flows. We had successfully implemented for you EPIC, Energy Sector Levies Act. We had left you robust tax policies and new arrangement in terms of the tax regime. Solid expenditure that has seen signs that it is coming down, only for this man to assume the office and then started to misbehave. Fiscally, as long as the management of the economy is concerned. And I tell you some of the things that he's done. From 2016 to 2017, when he took office, yes, we were under IMF program. He did a couple of things. One, he went to Parliament to create impression that he's removing very important tax policies.
The nuisance taxes.
He called it nuisance taxes. So he removed them. And that cost the nation approximately 1.5% of our GDP.
Okay.
At the same time, he introduced a lot more new expenditure handles he called it flagship projects, free senior high school, and a number of them. Put together, he increased our expenditure by approximately 3% of GDP.
Okay.
So from day one, the whole went down by approximately 5% of our GDP from day one, and created impressions to all of us, particularly to the investor community, that the revenue, the fiscal deficit was not going down. Let me share some data with you. And Raymond, and this for me is the reason why we are where we are. From the year 2017, what this government did was they posted a fiscal deficit of 4.8%. And that 4.8%, what this simply means is that our revenue and expenditure, in fact, expenditure outstrips our revenue by 12.3 billion Ghana cedis. So we lived above our means by 12.3 billion Ghana cedis in 1 year.
Okay.
So what this means is that you have to go and borrow 12.3 billion Ghana cedis to support the budget through financing. In the year 2018, this government decided to go overdrive. Overdrive. After borrowing 12.3 billion additional on top of the revenues that you've had, this government decided to increase the borrowing to 21.4 billion Ghana cedis.
From 12 to 21?
From 12 to 21.
Okay.
In 1 year, 2018. As if that is not enough. In 2019, he increased our fiscal deficit by borrowing another 25.2 billion Ghana cedis in 1 year. Then comes 2020, the year of COVID and the year of elections. You know what this government did? It was to blow your mind. They borrowed 67 billion Ghana cedis.
To provide all
67 billion Ghana cedis
support Ghana
for the purposes of elections. For the purposes of elections.
In all fairness.
No. It is not for COVID. It is not for COVID.
Our COVID expenditure is in the public domain.
But how much did they spend on COVID? You've heard them talk about it. The
Yes.
Minister of Finance was in Parliament.
Yes.
How much did they say they spend on COVID?
I can't recall immediately the figure, but
So I've heard them.
it was below the 60 billion.
No. In one breath they said 8 billion. In another breath they said 15 billion.
That's what they submitted. the
Okay,
8 billion
so
is what they submitted.
8 billion is what they
Yes.
submitted. But I'm telling you that they borrowed 67 billion Ghana cedis. So granted that 8 billion, where is the 59 billion cedis? Additional 59 billion cedis, additional expenditure.
But we borrow to pay, what they
Borrow
call
to
it.
pay what?
We borrow consistently to pay our debt. We do that all the time.
You
we borrow
see?
to pay, what they call it, interest rates.
Okay, so we have something we call primary balance. In this instance, they borrowed to pay the debt by 6.2 billion. To pay interest, about 6.2 billion.
Okay.
So if you factor that and take that out, see what happens.
So if you add it to the 8 billion, 6.2 and 8 billion, almost 16 or 40
other
billion.
country in the world run fiscal deficit in excess of 15% apart from Ghana. No other country. I've carefully compared this, compiled these statistics. And it's evident that it is only Ghana that decided to go on overdrive. The only difference between us and countries around our sub-region was the fact that we conducted elections and they did not conduct the elections. And that is why our fiscal deficit was 17.1%.
In fact, 2020, 14.7%.
Add what do you call it? What you call the debt arrest accumulation. Because fiscal deficit, if for instance,
but that's what government reported, 14.7%.
No, but government data.
But that's
have you noticed that? No, but
data.
have you noticed that they have subsequently revised that data?
The 40.7%.
Yes, because the IMF document that recently was published and the World Bank document that has recently been published has revised them. It has been revised subsequently.
Okay.
And that is why and the data I'm adding arrest accumulation.
Okay.
Do you know this government owes contractors to the tune of about 8% of our GDP as we speak?
Every government
8%, but has never happened through this magnitude. 40 billion arrest accumulation in an economy like this.
Do you know 40 billion is how much is owed to the contractors?
Exactly.
Or that's separate?
40 billion is how much is owed to the contractors.
Contractors alone?
Contractors. Government contractors.
I see.
From all sectors. In fact, roads alone is about 8 billion Ghana cedis. made up of those that Cocoa Board owns them and those that the Ministry of Roads and Highways owns them. Put together, road contractors alone, 8 billion go to the energy sector. Huge. Then move to the defense and interior sector. Massive. Education, don't talk about it. The arrest accumulation by this government is so huge. That is why we are where we are. His Excellency, the President, has mismanaged the Ghanaian economy big time. He cannot run away from this. He should not make an attempt to shift the burden or the blame to another person. That is terrible. He should not try it. You see, the first thing you do as a leader is that when something is wrong, you accept the blame and confront it head on. Unfortunately, what our president has done is that, don't blame me. I know nothing about it.
Is this not reality?
What is the reality?
The reality, and I'm quoting him, is that there are global inflation, high commodity prices, among others, and all these have been the principal reasons for the difficulties we are having as a country.
Okay, so let me tell you.
It's true there's global inflation.
Okay.
You agree there's high commodity prices. In fact, inflation is 31% actually.
Okay.
And all over the world, even in the UK, they are complaining about inflation.
Okay.
Of course, he mentioned other things. He said they are principally responsible for the difficulties we are having as a country today.
Okay, so let me first make the point that Ghana is not an island. We operate within ECOWAS, West Africa sub.
Yeah.
Compare the countries that we are in around us and compare the data. You see for yourself that obviously there is a problem with Ghana. Raymond, look through carefully the data that reflects the inflation basket and which one is actually driving, and try to relate it to international issues or what is happening globally. You notice that one major thing that is driving the global the inflation in Ghana is the exchange rate. It's the cedi that is depreciating. That is what is actually driving the inflation in Ghana. For a simple reason that, yes, the global oil price may be going up, but if your currency is stable, obviously if you convert it, it will not be the same as when your currency is depreciating about 43% already. It will never be the same. If the cedi had not depreciated by 43%, today the cedi is trading about 10.3. When I checked this morning and what do you call it, a Forex Bureau, 10.3. In fact, 10.35, one cedi to the US dollar. Beginning of the year, the cedi was trading at 6. So for instance, if you buy a barrel of crude oil or petroleum, let's say Brent, and you convert it, even if it's $100 per metric ton, and you convert it at the rate of 6 cedis to the dollar, it will certainly be different from converting it at 10 cedis to the dollar.
Yeah, it will be more expensive.
And that is why we are actually suffering today. He cannot run away from it.
But how is that government doing? How is that mismanagement?
Okay, so let me tell you why there is mismanagement here. Our currency is depreciating for a simple reason that our debt has become unsustainable. As a result, number of things has happened. And first of all, let me tell you why our debt has become unsustainable. This government, since they took office, believes that every single fiscal program must be confronted with one bond. I call it one program, one bond. They always borrow money left, right, and center without looking back, as if we are not going to repay.
So did the NDC. In 2013, we went into
an
era, but we took, like you said, about $1 billion or so. In 2014, we took more. 2015, we did.
So the question is,
when we had an IMF
but the question
hands,
is, how much did NDC take?
But the principles are...
But how much did NDC take? This is an administration that have accumulated approximately $13 billion US dollars. $13 billion US dollars in Eurobond borrowings, without pointing to what they've used the money
for. How much did the NDC do between 2013 and 2015?
I think it's about 2.5. Slightly under 3 billion. Because we did 750, 1 billion, 1 billion. So 2.75.
Okay.
2.75. Okay, so if somebody takes 2.75 and then you comes in, the same person that criticized him comes in and take 13 billion without accounting for that money, you think that is right?
I mean, let's separate the taking from the accounting first now. You don't have a problem with the Eurobond money, right?
No, but you see,
Because
first of
NDC
all,
did it.
First of all,
Principle is that it's okay to take the money.
it is okay to take the money, but
Yes.
when you take it and spend it in your mouth, chop, chop, when the time comes that you have to repay,
Or
you
account for
struggle to repay. These guys decided to go to the Eurobond market, borrow 13 billion, and use it to buy Chinchinga. Is that how to spend public money?
What is the evidence that we...
Oh, the public is there. You see the consumption expenditure. You see,
where?
okay, so let me take you to the data.
Yes.
Okay, look at government budget, for instance.
20.
Government budget, if you have, and I point you to the day that they went for 3 billion, any of them, let's say 2019 or 2020 or any of them.
No, I'm talking about which year do you want me to actually
So pick let's say 2021, they went to the Eurobond market to take 3 billion.
Okay,
so take 2021.
21 budget.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, exactly what do you want to point out from
and
there?
then I'll show you exactly in terms of, tell me how much is capital expenditure.
Okay, give me a second. I should be able
Capital
to pull that
expenditure.
up in the moment. That shouldn't be difficult at all. Now,
Capital expenditure.
yes, but what point are you making with that?
You see, my point is that what this administration has consistently been doing is that they go to the bond market, borrow and use it for chop-chop, instead of borrowing and using it for capital expenditure or an investment.
Okay, so when you said the Chinchinga, it didn't mean that it's they use it for the meat.
No. I mean, Chinchinga is chop-chop.
Ah, okay, so that's what you meant.
It's
I
chop-chop.
wanted to be clear.
I wanted to point
Yes,
to you that
yes.
the borrowing is not going to investment. The borrowing is actually going to chop-chop.
Let's break it down this way. How much do we spend on the average on interest payments?
Okay.
Percentage of our budget.
Okay, so for instance, if you take the year 2021, interest payment and amortization,
Yeah.
which is debt servicing, is the two.
Yeah.
Interest payment and amortization.
Yeah.
As a percentage of your total revenue has increased from 66% when we left office to 87%. 87%. When we were in office, we used 66% in the year 2016 of our total revenue, tax revenue, to service our interest and amortization, total debt servicing.
Okay.
Today, in the year 2021, full data, obviously from government, says that 87% of our tax revenue was used to service our debt and to amortize our debt as and when they fall due. That is terrible. That shows you how the administration has mismanaged the Ghanaian economy. So my argument is that the investors have seen clearly that our debt is unsustainable to the extent that Ghana cannot repay its debt. And that is why all the rating agencies have subsequently decided to downgrade Ghana to the C. Junk, terribly junk, to a level that we are going to D, a possible default, staring at us in the coming months.
Are the hyperinflation, high commodity prices, all the references that the president made here, are they contributory factors?
You see, I'm saying the major driver of our inflation is the exchange rate.
Exchange rate.
And the second is the fact that the central bank is printing money to finance government expenditure.
Which they have dismissed.
They have dismissed what? What have they dismissed?
The
It is in the budget and you are saying they have dismissed.
No,
I disagree with them completely.
Yes, but
in fact, I wrote again.
But I'm mandated
But I wrote them. I wrote
with
again.
respect, I'm
and said that I
mandated
disagree
to
with
point
them.
out to the people who are listening today.
So what did they say?
That the point that you made
Yeah.
about how much money has been printed.
Yes.
Central Bank finally came out to say,
And say
that these amounts is
that they have printed less amount. That's what they said.
Yes.
They said, okay, we've printed some money, but we've printed less amount.
But they do print money.
So they
That's
said
their
they've
job.
printed less amount.
Yes.
So they are saying that I'm saying they've printed 22 billion.
Yeah.
So they are saying, no, we've not printed 22, we've printed 12 billion.
Yeah.
They said, look, I've killed a human being, but I didn't kill the tall one, I killed a short one.
But the quantum
There's
was
a killing.
relevant because that
But
was
you see,
huge.
the quantum is still 22 billion. The
You
idea
would
to
insist so.
rationalize would not wash with me because obviously that is what is in the government document. I did not prepare the government document. They prepared it. They showed to us that they've printed 22 billion Ghana cedis, and I insist, it's 22 billion Ghana cedis. That is what it is. So when in the middle of major crisis like this, and you decide to go that tangent, obviously inflation will be galloping. And that is why we are saying what we are saying today. Unfortunately, Raymond,
yes,
because the international market shut down on Ghana, so we cannot enter the market, we cannot borrow to shore the reserves as they've been doing since 2017. That is one. Secondly, because there's a loss of confidence on Ghanaian economy as a result of high debt burden, and the fact that if care is not taken, we cannot repay our debt. What is happening is that the investors are exiting the domestic market. And when they exit, they go with their dollars. So your reserves is also dwindling. Therefore, even though the demand has not changed, the supply is actually not coming in. And that is why our currency is deteriorating. The government,
I want you to
particularly the president,
mismanagement within this.
Yes, so the mismanagement is that, one, you have overborrowed, to the extent that the investors have lost confidence in the Ghanaian economy.
Not only in Ghanaian economy, I mean, in the Salvador economy, in the Sri Lanka economy, so many other economies.
So now we should compare ourselves to Sri Lanka. No wonder we have a lot in common.
In fact, a general crunch
Ghana has some similarities in governance with Sri Lanka. I don't doubt that. Debt levels and how governance is being done. You see, in Sri Lanka, there's a lot of family and friends. When you come to Ghana, there's a lot of family and friends. If you see the debt levels is the same. So I'm not surprised you are comparing Ghana to Sri Lanka. Sadly, that is where we are going. I only pray, touch wood, that we will not go to the same route that Sri Lanka has got into, because we have a lot of similarities. Okay. A lot of similarities. But you see, let's compare properly. Compare properly. This is not our place. This is Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana. We are obviously the black star of Africa. We don't deserve this mismanagement from Nana Akufo-Addo and his government. Ghana has been run aground by this administration. Badly.
Would you have made the same observation between 2017 and 2019?
You see, I'm on record to have said that 2017, in terms of the debt accumulation, and in terms of the fiscal deficit that we saw, we need to commend the administration.
Okay.
And I did that. In fact, if you go to...
So government did not mismanage the state
in 2017.
They did not.
The mismanagement actually started in the year 2018. 2018 got worse in 2019, and they went overdrive in 2020 because they want to win election. They came back post-election and decided to stay on and did worse in 2021. 2022, they are trying to be cosmetic. Again, they are going to mismanage big time.
Okay, now,
big time.
I needed to clarify this because the argument from government is that prior to COVID, everybody knew that we're doing very well and that we had not shown any signs of having to be treated like this by international rating agencies. Our inflation was very good, our exchange rate was appreciable, and quite frankly, we have been lauded for managing the situation a bit in a better mode. So that's why government has insisted that anybody that refuses to admit that it is COVID and the Ukraine-Russia war's contribution, that's taking us where we are today. And if you want to believe the vice president, who extend the scope, you in the NDC, your financial crisis you couldn't resolve, that they had to resolve with a huge amount of money. Secondly, you in the NDC, your energy crisis that you couldn't resolve, that they had to resolve, are the two other compendium of factors that brought us where we are today. This is the president speaking about external factors,
yes,
with Bawumia adding the two other local factors, which are purely within your terrain.
Yes.
How do you then justify your claim that this government is the one that mismanaged the economy and brought us to where we are today?
Raymond, this government has been very useless. If you're a government and you've run an economy for almost 6 years, and all what you do is to criticize your previous administration who served in office for only 4 years, then you have a major problem at hand.
Are the issues
this
true or not, whether or not?
True. This government has proven...
But we know that there was...
No.
In fact, government has consistently referred to excess capacity. Government has also referred to...
Government is lying. Government so-called excess capacity is untruth. In fact, this government is actually trying to cover up their mess. They decided, under Boakye Jaako, when he was the minister responsible for energy, to grant some form of subsidy through the energy price reduction. They came to Parliament, made an announcement, it became a major fanfare, and they failed to pay for it. Today, it has landed all of us in a mess, to the extent that as we speak, they owe the, the independent power producers, IPPs, about $1 billion US. $1 billion US. Data that I've seen, $1 billion US. Read my lips. That's how much they've.
Yeah, but energy debt, we always had energy debt. That's
but not just
ESLA.
But ESLA, they've mismanaged ESLA as well. Now, what is happening? The ESLA money they are collecting, but they are not paying in the debt itself. They only servicing the interest.
So you're saying that
they've mismanaged the economy.
Not happen.
You see, the financial crisis,
the banking sector crisis.
Okay, so let me give you an example.
And did not
let me give you an example.
$5 billion to resolve that.
Let me give you an example.
Crisis.
The entire capitalization, the books of all the banks was 10. The banks that they actually collapsed is 10 billion cedis. Their balance sheet was 10 billion cedis. 10 billion. Mm-hmm. So how can you use 25 billion cedis to collapse something that is worth 10 billion cedis? Where is the rest of the money? In fact, if I have my own way, we need to commission forensic audit into how these banks was collapsed and how taxpayers' money was used. Because I doubt the 25 billion went into the liquidation of these banks.
But you are in Parliament. You've been given.
But I cannot. I on my own way, I cannot commission a forensic audit into this.
Year after year, you've seen the books from both the BOD
but
and also from
I have always come out to challenge these numbers.
I've always
and said that it cannot be right, because how could you spend 25 billion to collapse something that is worth 10 billion? How could you? Where's the rest of the money? And that is why I'm not surprised. The minister is saying one word, different amount. The president is saying another different amount. And the vice president yesterday or so, I heard him say $7 billion. So at what rate? Because when I did my math, I did not get that. Because something is certainly wrong. They're only trying to apportion blames that does not exist. Let me advise the president and his government. They should simply accept the blame, address the nation and say to all of us that they are ready to resolve their mess. Other than that, their attitude, what they are saying, their posture is actually putting people off. They have continuously, since 2017, in fact, live above the means, above their means. A government, or what the government does is you collect revenue and you spend your revenue and manage efficiently. You collect 1 cedi and you'll be spending 5 cedis. The remaining 4 cedis every day, you add up. Even in your household, if you behave like this, it will catch up with you. This is what has catch up with us. In fact, I can tell you on authority that your caption today, either we are living a champagne life on a akpeteshie budget, is excellent. Ghana is indeed living a champagne life on an akpeteshie budget. And I tell you one thing.
Except that Godfrey Boppin says we've been doing this since 1965.
But see, you see, Ghana
so it's not this government.
No, but it has gotten worse. No government has run fiscal deficit of 17% before. In fact, even if you use government official numbers of 14 point something, no government has ever run that before. Let me show you some information.
Okay.
This is expenditure returns from the Office of the President. Office of the President, though. This is not Office of Government Machinery. Office of the President itself, the President Office. Salaries alone at the President Office staff for the year 2020, they paid 79.2 million Ghana cedis salaries. How many members of staff are in the President's office?
Thousands of them. Actually, they issued a statement on that.
79.2 million Ghana cedis.
Is it too much?
It's too much.
Compared to what?
It's too much.
Compared to what?
You see, if you go back,
yes.
no government has been running these numbers before.
How much was it in 2016?
In fact, 2016, it was about 20-something million. You are talking about 79.2 million Ghana cedis.
This is 2020?
This is 2020. I have the 2021 numbers. I was trying to get
Is it lower or higher?
It's too high. Apart from that, look at goods and services. And goods and services is what they use to buy papers and to run the office.
That's true.
Office of the President. They spent 304 million Ghana cedis. 304 million Ghana cedis. In fact, 304.7 million Ghana cedis for the purposes of goods and services. office of the president alone. Let me give you a breakdown on this.
You break it down, but I need to let people understand this point clearly, because mostly when we mention office of the president, the response is that it's been mischievously done, and that there are 42 different institutions, including some other relevant state institutions that are under the same office of the president. Are you not doing the same mischief? We're barely putting the numbers together and suggesting it's huge, when in reality, it is actually spread across a very huge number of institutions.
So that is not the case. We have Office of Government Machinery and Office of the President.
Okay.
Office of the Government Machinery is where we have the 42 agencies under the Office of the President, where the Chief of Staff sits as the head of institution, or the President sits as the head of administration. Okay. In this case, I am zeroing in into the office of the president itself. The president's office, where you have the chief of staff, cabinet secretariat, where you have the vice president secretariat and others. In fact, it is only 6 cost centers. 6 cost centers, namely general administration, office of chief of staff, vice president secretariat, cabinet secretariat, press secretariat, and policy coordination and delivery unit. This is what I'm talking about.
This is what I'm talking about, office of the
They
president.
spend 79.2 million Ghana cedis as compensation. Salaries alone. And in fact, they spend 304.7 million Ghana cedis only for the purposes of, goods and services, running their offices. So, and I'll give you the breakdown.
Yes, you give me the breakdown.
General administration. They spend 37.4 million Ghana cedis. 1 year. Office of the Chief of Staff, 240.5 million Ghana cedis. Chief of Staff Secretariat. What I thought did the Chief of Staff use this money for? 240.5 million Ghana cedis. 1 year? Or is it because it's an election year? 1 year? I mean, it's just too much. How much are you mobilizing in form of tax revenue?
How much would that have been? Okay.
Look, Chief of Staff Secretariat shouldn't spend more than 40 billion.
Because
it shouldn't spend more than 40 million. I don't know what they use this 240 million.
But is that not the most important question here?
You see, because
if you don't know what
they appeared before the finance. They appeared before the finance committee.
Yes.
That's the question.
You asked what they used the money for?
Large majority of this amount went into the sky bath. The president travels.
That's been rejected as not.
Rejected by what? But who pays?
No.
Somebody must pay.
They don't.
So are you telling me that when the president rents a jet, nobody pays?
No, they're saying
no. The question is who pays. It will reflect somewhere.
The national security's operational cost.
This is also an operational cost, and I'm telling you that when they appeared before us, and this amount, 240 million, was paid as part of president travels.
How much of it was specifically devoted for?
Well, they didn't give us the details because they said it's a matter of security issues and all of that. They can't divulge.
Yes. So is this different from the operational cost at the national security?
You see, the government has 2 operational costs: the national security operational cost and that of the chief of staff's office.
Yeah. So
now their budget here is 240 billion, not a budget. The amount they spend
for the office of chief of staff.
Office of chief of staff alone.
Okay. So because I'm asking this because to me, you should be in the position to know what something is used for, to say that it's useful or not useful. I hope you get my point.
But it's not useful. I can tell you that this amount is not useful. It's just way too much.
Because you're comparing it to what?
Because I'm comparing to past how much we have spent. No government has done this.
But there's been inflation. There's been
but you see,
we are sitting here talking about.
But even if you look, it's easy. I can easily calculate it. Take the deflator and then deflate it to current value. And you notice that clearly they are still living above their means.
In 2016, how much was the office
of the chief of staff spent about 20-something million? Less than 30 million. In fact, I have all the data that I've taken my time to compile. Unfortunately, when you called me, I was in the middle of somewhere, so I couldn't come in. No, I could only pick one of them.
So you're saying that it moved from 20 million in 2016.
And then has gradually increased to 240 million. Office of Chief of Staff alone.
But you approved this, right?
You approve what?
As in Parliament, you approved this.
What Parliament approved, they exceeded this budget. Parliament did not approve for the office of the president an amount of 379 million to be spent in the year 2020. They have consistently breached their budget line. So you recall that.
How much did
you recall that?
for them?
I can't remember offhand.
Okay.
You recall that I have always come out to challenge them to say that what they are doing at the office of the president is not good enough. But they should lead by example.
But your document suggests that Parliament approved 208 million.
Yes.
308 million.
No, this is their own budget. From the office of their own approved
That's
budget. This is not what Parliament.
Okay.
This document was actually given to us by the office of the president.
Okay, so this is their breakdown.
Exactly.
Of it, not how much you approved as
Exactly.
Parliament.
Not how much we approved as
for
Parliament.
the various units and
exactly
the
what
office of the
I'm
chief of
talking
staff. But I've not heard you or any of your colleagues. It's been 2 years.
Oh no, I've been
say
talking
that
about
they
this.
should be hauled in for over expenditure in this particular unit.
Raymond, unfortunately, this country, until the crisis started, no one was listening to the minority. We have said so much.
Okay.
We have asked so much, but no one gave us a listening ear. As if we were punching in the air. Mm-hmm. And when the crisis started, they are saying that, how did we go here? We started warning you long ago.
I see.
In fact, I have held series of press conferences. Mm-hmm. Few listened. Few appreciated it. Today, everything is coming home to be roasted. And people are now, how did you get there? We were telling you, but you were not listening. So you cannot blame the minority, please.
Now, you think that the
let me give you some more data.
No,
Office of the Vice President, yes. They spent 18.1.
18 million.
18.1 million.
Yes.
Okay, poor Vice President, he had 18.1. Chief of Staff, 240 million.
Yeah, but what's the Vice President?
Press Secretary.
You have more than that.
You see, but the question is, Vice President, 8 million in 1 year. What at all did he use the money for? And the worst of all,
8 million or 18 million?
18.1 million.
That's for the Vice President.
For the Vice President's office. Goods and services, just to run that small office of almost about 10 staff or maybe probably 20 staff. How to run the office alone, 18.1 million. We are living above our means. And let us state that. The next
point... Did they explain what they used the 18.1 million for?
Oh, just they said running costs, buying papers and all of that. I don't know the kind of paper. Maybe they bought a boutique paper.
For 18 million?
Yes, I don't know the kind of pens that they use.
Sorry, is this still goods and services?
It's still goods and services. This is before you, goods and services.
Okay, but it's interesting because I need to understand how all of this works. So just to run the Vice President's office in 2020, it cost us 18 million.
18 million.
Okay. Yeah, and you think that this is high or low?
No, it's high. It's too.
It's high.
Too.
Compared
too
to,
high.
what was it in 2020?
And I've always compared it.
Yeah.
And as I said, I have data. Unfortunately,
Maybe,
when I get home, I'll email it to you.
That'll be fine. I'll be fine to get that.
I've taken time
but
to run data
lower.
year on year. Far lower. Far lower.
Okay, I get you.
And I show you another one. They said capital expenditure, 100.1 million. And this is what surprised me. So
capital expenditure means that big ticket projects.
So yes, at the office of the president.
Yeah.
So I decided to find out what they used the money. 90% of this money went into cars.
They bought cars?
Cars.
In 2020?
2020. 90% of this 100 million capital expenditure went to cars. Cars, V8.
What's the evidence to back it?
No, they appeared before us.
So that's what, who said it then?
No, but you see, when, okay, so let me take you through.
On this part, to be fair.
So you see, that's what I'm saying. This is headline numbers.
Yes.
Capital expenditure. So
of the office
it's my
of the
job,
Chief of Staff.
Office of the Chief of Staff.
To ask the question.
So my job is to ask a question. You won't be there. So I ask a question of what did you use this money for? And give me a breakdown. They say it's largely for cars. And so they provided some data. And this has been over almost 2 years.
I want to be able to query this matter.
Yes, and I will give them to you. I will give you more.
Largely for cars.
The person who appeared before us.
Who is that?
Oh, at the time, I'm sure it's the Deputy Chief of Staff, something Brazil or something. That's his name.
Okay, I get you. So this is 2020.
Yes.
And
no, they appeared before us in 2021.
Okay, that's interesting.
2021, and you recall that in the year 2020, because it's a transition year for 2021, because it's a transition year, the budget was done sometimes, I'm sure, in March or thereabout. Mm-hmm. So they provided us full day data for the entire year. Okay. That's how come we got the full year.
There's a question I need to ask you. All of this talk about having to live within our means. Today, list the areas you think we should cut if we want to live within our means before we go.
Number one, the office of the president. They have to lead by example. They should cut their expenditure to the bone to signal to the people of this country that we are in bad times. Leadership is everything.
Two,
when the president is moving, and you see 50 cars following the president, at the time that you use 87% of your tax revenue just to pay your interest, then what this means is that the cars, all of this money, the cars that are moving, they use borrowed money to buy the cars. And the fuel, they are borrowing money to buy fuel. So why do you borrow to buy fuel and allow 50 cars to follow a president? That should stop, number one. Number two, it should start from the ministries, departments and agencies. They should also lead by example. They should cut those unnecessary expenditures down, big time, and then move to Parliament. Ourselves, yes, of course. You can't confront the situation by exempting yourself. All of us.
What should happen in Parliament?
Parliament as well. The administration of Parliament must also cut down those expenditures. And if we have to confront the problem and save this country, all of us must lead by example. I think the time has come for us to review our governance structure. Period. Nothing more, nothing less.
Thank you so much, Honorable. And many thanks to you folks for joining us on today's edition of UPfront. And surely next week, come your way with another edition.